Okay, so everyone's getting ready. I already made an announcement. Dave, I think Bart told you everything, but basically there will be 2 5-minute opening statements. Sorry.
I get a ban on this dog.
Kathleen, let me handle the moderation. So, David, there will be 5-minute opening statements from both sides. And people are already getting ready. They're excited. And then there will be 30 to 40-minute open discussion, and then we will be taking audience questions, right? All right.
Good.
All right. So, Oracle, we're going live now. 3, 2, 1. David, this is about the Metoo movement. It's collateral damages. Let's hear your 5-minute opening statement. We're ready to go. Go.
We're ready to go. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on the show. And, it's a pretty big pretty big deal that we're talking about the Metoo movement here in 2020 and in the face of this pandemic. I hope it brings everything into perspective. I was an activist for 24 years, and I got myself up the ladder, and I worked really hard. And in that time, I worked really hard to be a voice for feminism in the atheist movement. And I think I did very well in doing my things. But what happened to me was that I had some sexual experiences with some people, but 2 women lied and used those lies for personal gain. And it completely enthralled me at first. It completely flew me at first, because women aren't supposed to lie about sexual assault for personal gain, but they did. And when I was when they made those lies, I was fired with no due process. So I wasn't given the chance to post my side at all. My eyewitnesses, who included 2 board members, my pictures, my recordings, all that stuff, it never saw the light of day. And it didn't see the light of day until after I was fired. And then when it did see the light of day, I was rehired. And then another woman lied again and said that a touch on her back was sexual assault. Now, I have gone from a complete Me Too proponent to a complete Me Too opponent because of the behavior. And what I have realized is that Me Too is a movement that is based completely on mantra. It is a movement based completely devoid of numbers, completely devoid of objectives, completely devoid of what we want to accomplish with this movement. There are some vague ideas that we want women to come out more when they're sexually assaulted, but we have no numbers about how many women aren't coming out about sexually assaulted, or that we have any sort of effect on that by taking down men who are otherwise innocent. And that's what's happening. We have a collateral damage going on. We have women who can and will lie about sexual assault for personal gain. It happened to me 3 times. It's also happened very clearly to Johnny Depp and other people. And what we have is this movement, this leftover feminism movement, which cannot admit that women can be liars, cannot admit that women can be terrible, and cannot admit that even if you're a straight white guy, you might not be guilty of committing any crimes. And if you are guilty of committing some crimes, you shouldn't be thrown out because some people say that you committed more crimes than you did without any sort of evidence. And what we have seen is this division, this terrible ejection of men from their places. Myself is only one example. And done so with vigor and with ferocity from this crowd that says that it's being done on behalf of women who are unable to come out on their own without having any data to back them up. And so when I look at myself as collateral damage for this movement, I say, well, if I'm going to be collateral damage for the movement, at least the movement is doing something positive. And at this point now, we've been having this for 2 years. What positive has happened? What has happened? What is positive? Well, some people have gotten thrown out. Some bad guys have gotten thrown out, and that's good. But some bad women have also lied and taken down some good men using the false mantra that women can't lie about sexual assault. Me Too is dangerous to women. It infantilizes women. It takes away our skepticism. It takes away due process, which is something that we must hold dear. It does not have any sort of basis in proof that it is actually doing anything at all, or that there is even a problem in the first place. We don't know. And so when we say, oh, well, this is fine because it's so important, and yet we have absolutely no numbers to back that up, well, we don't have a movement that's actually about helping the victims. What we have is a movement that's actually geared toward revenge. And that's what we're seeing here. That's the kangaroo court. That's the mob mentality that we're seeing here. It's not about justice anymore. It was once upon a time, and it should be again. I think Me Too was a good idea to start with. But what happened now, it's just not, it's not skepticism, it's not justice, and it's not even good for women. And that's why the Me Too movement has gone too far. It has gone past the I'm going to get bad guys out into the I'm going to use male guilt and the lie that women can't lie in order to allow women to just take down guys they don't like and ruin their lives without due process and without mercy. And that's why Me Too has gone too far.
Thank you, David. Kathleen, your 5-minute opening statement, please.
Okay, so I want to go ahead and apologize if I accidentally dropped for some reason. My internet just has been going wild. Anyway, Dave, I'd like to thank you for agreeing to come here. It's awesome that you agreed to come and discuss this topic with us, because I think it is an extremely important social justice movement. Maybe, at least in my lifetime, the most important social justice movement. And I think it has implications that go far and beyond Twitter posts and news stories. I believe, at least in order to have this discussion, we first have to truly define what it is that the Me Too movement is, its founding, its goals, and what the people who are a part of this want for the future. And to ask, has this movement gone too far? We must know what it is that they are first of all trying to achieve. Me Too was started in 2006 by Tanara Burke, who is an African-American activist and sexual assault survivor. And she began a discussion with Black women and young girls about the prominence of sexual violence within the Black community. The movement didn't really take off or become a movement or really have any kind of national attention until 2017, when Alyssa Milano and several other celebrity feminists began using the tag on Twitter, #MeToo. The Me Too movement is multi-purpose activism. Its first goal, and probably what I believe is its most important goal, at least early on, was solidarity. It didn't have anything to do with anything other than to give women the ability to cope with one another by saying, you're not alone, this happened to me. And of course, we can expand that more broadly into anybody that has been a victim of sexual assault, as you are not alone. This happened to me too. And when we are not alone, it's not as big of a problem necessarily. It becomes easier to deal with, especially if we know that someone somewhere has survived. The second goal is to give a sense of magnitude to the issues of sexual violence. Now, we know historically that crime rates have been dropping, at least in Western civilizations, America, Europe, Canada, that the crime rates have been going down across the board. But when we think about sexual assault, when we think about domestic violence, when we think about really any kind of crime, we cannot insulate ourselves to merely the Western world. We have to think of the entire globe as a whole. So when we think about Me Too in its instantiation as an American social justice thing, we now expand that out globally to a global social justice movement. In a world where we have seen leaps forward in areas of civil rights in the West, we have done precious little to address how sexual violence still shapes every aspect of our society, not only in America, but the entire world. The World Health Organization estimates that 1/3 of all women worldwide are personally affected by sexual violence. this bringing forward a conversation about what sexual violence is, its scope, and to help those who have suffered in silence for far too long to heal, and attempt to finally address and end the plague that is sexual violence. So these are the goals that I think I will be at least attempting to frame my conversation around. And of course, if anything needs to be added, I'm certainly open to that. So I think in closing, I think what we have to ask ourselves is, the question is, has this movement gone too far? Well, we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean for something to go too far? Too far carries a perceived negative connotation, understood, I believe, to say that this thing has had unintended or intended consequences that have negatively affected society at large and the individual. Is there a witch hunt by men, by radical feminists, determined to overthrow the patriarchy? This seems a little far-fetched to me. Are there people who have been falsely accused of sexual impropriety and have had their lives irreversibly affected? Possibly. Has sexual violence been an issue for longer than our history books go back? That's unequivocally a yes. So if the question is, has me gone too far? I believe the answer is it hasn't gone far enough. And that is the conclusion of how I think I will be framing, at least from my conversation.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. There was slight mic issues, though I was able to hear everything. Dave, can you confirm that you heard Kathleen's opening statement well?
Yeah, I heard her.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're going to the next segment, which will be open conversations between you two for 30 to 35 minutes. Dave, you begin, please.
So, Kathleen, that was a good opening, and one of the things that I want to start out on the bat here is that you and I are both good people, and we're both trying to do good things and get the world to a place. And I think that if we were to look at the place that you were trying to get the world to and a place that I was trying to get the world to, I think they'd be pretty similar worlds. I think we're just disagreeing on, they'd be worlds without prejudice, without bigotry, without violence, without hate, and without unnecessary jailing. I must say, I got to take the only thing that you said that I take issue with was the way you kind of tossed out, might some guys' lives be ruined? Maybe. It's definitely happening. It happened to me, and it's happening all over the place. And we have to admit, as I'm a second wave feminist, I've been a feminist person since I was a kid, and we have to admit where something isn't quite right. This idea that how do I say this right? I think it's just the idea that we have these objectives for this movement. You are not alone. To tell the women that they are not alone. These are your objectives, and to give some sense of magnitude of the violence against women. And you're magnifying the violence against women by far if you're not applying any sort of due process. And if you're not saying, hey, these guys' lives are being ruined, you're magnifying the damage artificially, and you're still not doing it with any numbers. Wouldn't it be much more effective to our common goal of making sure that women are not feeling alone, our common goal of giving a true sense of the magnitude of violence? Wouldn't that encompass numbers? Wouldn't that encompass something beyond, we just got to keep doing this forever and not pay attention to the damage that we're causing to real human beings? Human beings like, I have to say it, like myself, who's been fighting on our side for so long. Don't you think it's important that we recognize the damage that it's causing?
Well, so there's a couple ways that I could address that. I think the first distinction that we obviously need to make is that there is a difference between what happens in a court of law versus what happens in a private business. The way in which a private business purports to operate itself in the public sphere does not have anything to do with the way that we would prosecute a crime. So if a private company feels that a person has done something that mars their reputation, that may prevent them from doing business as they choose to do, they are well within their rights to remove that person from their company, and then doesn't really need to be any, charges filed in a court of law. So that's one thing we have to
do. The man's life is still ruined, but the man's life is still ruined, and he didn't get any sort of due process. It may be the legal right of the company to do that, but is it moral?
Well, I don't want to necessarily want to get into normative statements quite yet, because morality can be a twitchy thing, and we could end up having the whole conversation about that. But I would say when we talk about someone's lives being ruined, right? When we think about that, I can only think of one person, and I'm going to include you in this, whose lives have been unequivocally ruined by the Metoo, and that's going to be Harvey Weinstein, who's now doing 23 years in prison for being convicted of 2 counts of
actual criminal. I lost everything, and I got to say, Kathleen, that's a really terrible thing to say to a victim. It's a really terrible thing for you to say to me that, oh, I just got to say that I don't think your life has been ruined. Dude, I lost everything in my life. I lost my career, my wife, my family, my friends, my reputation. I lost everything because women lied, not because I did something and got caught, but because women lied. One of the women brought me to a party as her friend, and when I touched her on the back to see if there was anything I could do to help her, she filed a police report and called it sexual assault and made such a fuss that I got fired because the company I had to leave. That's not moral. And yes, we are going to go there because I am saying that this argument is immoral. Me Too is immoral. And that saying, oh, we're not going to talk about the morality of hurting people's lives without due process, that's an immoral statement, Kathleen. We have to talk about the morality of Me Too. It is immoral. People are getting hurt.
Well, again, it's not that I don't mind talking about the normativity. Right, it's just that I don't want to dive right into it. When I said I'm going to include in that, I don't want to think that I don't want you to think that I am lessening the impact of things that you've gone through. But when I think about a life being ruined, right, I think about someone who has no capacity whatsoever to lift themselves back up. Now, as I understand it, and I don't really want to get into too much personal stuff with you. About your, I understand it's important to you, but as to the general conversation about the broader Me Too movement, you have been rehired, as I understand it, as the executive director for Atheist International Alliance. Is that correct?
Oh, that did happen. And then the woman made the false Me Too allegation that said touching her on the back was sexual assault. And then I had to leave that too. Is that okay? Is that moral? The reason I was rehired was because the first one was so obviously false that I got rehired against the whole Me Too push. But then that resulted in a hunt for me, Kathleen. They hunted me.
Let me ask you this. Do you agree that the criminal justice system has made mistakes in the past?
Of course. It's a flawed system. But at least everybody process.
But we wouldn't say that the criminal justice system has gone too far if it gets something wrong. We recognize that all systems, all movements, be it from the earliest instantiation of America to where we are now, from trying to get Black people recognized as human beings and the right to vote, women the right to vote, the civil rights movement, so on and so forth, that there were mistakes along the way, and those mistakes indirectly or directly can cause people harm. But we don't say that those movements failed simply because there were mistakes made. We recognize and agree with mistakes that were made. And absolutely, I agree with you that generally speaking, and you said you wanted to talk about numbers, it is just true that women typically do not lie about sexual assault. But when one does, and we don't live in a world where
that's an assumption. You have no numbers for that at all. That's my point.
Well, I'm going to disagree with that. I believe that the number
off of assumptions.
Well, I'm going to disagree with that. I believe that there are numbers provided by RAINN and the World Health Organization and the National Center Against Domestic Violence, the National Center Against Child Violence, and the National Center
There are
Against Sexual
no numbers about false allegations. There are zero numbers. What there are is one set of numbers that says 2 to 10% of rape allegation police reports are false. And people are saying, oh, let's take that 2 to 10%, make it 2%, and just expand it over, anonymous reports to BuzzFeed and say that that's a 2% chance. That's the only number we have, and it's completely bogus that we as a movement are using them. The fact is, we don't have numbers. The fact is that this presumption that you make that women are so oppressed has zero numbers behind it. And the idea that we are doing anything at all has zero numbers behind it. We are killing people's lives here and not paying attention to the repercussions and trying to pretend that we're actually doing something when we have no way to tell if we're doing anything right. And we have people like you, Kathleen. I'm sure you're a very nice person, but for you to say that only one person who's been ever ruined by this is a rapist? No, I lost everything I cared about. Yeah, I can find another job. And yes, you know what? There's a lot of women that you know that have been raped. They've been raped hard and it's been terrible for them. But they've got other jobs, right? They got other jobs. They're fine, right? But you don't say that to them because it's a terrible thing to take a violation like this and minimize it down to, oh, I don't think we should even count you as a significant factor. Kathy, you've got no numbers. And you've got a mantra that is built on taking away due process, which is there, and it was there in all those other movements for the purpose of progress. This is anti-progress. This is going to stop people from getting along. This is going to make fear. It's making fear. I mean, it's making fear. Men are afraid to hire women now. That's true. That's true. It's asinine. It's asinine. Go ahead.
I think I'm not trying to discredit your personal experience. That was very emotionally charged.
I'm sorry about that.
No, and it's fine. Look, I understand that these things can run emotional. I'm only and ever interested in what, I believe to be the facts of the matter. The facts are that we know worldwide, at least 1 in 5 women will be raped at some point in time in their life.
But Kathy, I'm going to interrupt you there, okay? Because you're using worldwide, and that includes Africa. And there's a lot of rape in Africa, and there's a lot of sexual assault in Africa. And when you're using numbers from RAINN, like 1 out of 3 women worldwide are personally affected by sexual assault. Well, sexual assault can be a pat on the ass on the train, or it can be rape. And personally affected can be I was pinned down and raped in a train station, or my friend was patted on the ass. That's a really broad statement. And when you're saying I'm going to use global numbers because USA numbers show a decrease in everything across the board, which you've already admitted, you are again trying to make an issue out of something that I think is not really an issue. I think you should stick to US numbers because you're really skewing your numbers when you bring in Africa.
Well, as a person who was born and raised in Africa, I can tell you that Africa gets a bad rap. It's not nearly as bad as, Africa is not a third world, an entirely third world area. There are third world areas in it, but I can tell you from personally living there that there's not much difference between South Sudan and inner city Detroit.
But if you're bringing in the Muslim world, rape and sexual assault are part and parcel of the Muslim world. So if you're looking at Northern Africa, if you're looking at the Middle East, you're talking about skewing your numbers dramatically, and it's affecting your argument. So I just wanted to raise awareness of that. When you say things like 1 in 5 and 1 in 3 worldwide, that's not here, and that's not what is helping. It isn't helping at all.
Well, so that's. I'm sorry, David, but again, that's just a minimization. Right? I don't care where it is. Right? The fact that, first of all, let's just for might's sake define what it is that assault is. Right? So I understand assault to be any kind of touching, be it innocent or otherwise, that is unwanted. That would be considered assault. And as far as, the other part of that, we would have to talk about consent. When we put our hand on someone's shoulders, do I think that should be considered an assault? No, of course not.
That's what I have police charges against me now.
But if that person then says, "Please don't do that," that is understood that you do not have consent to touch that person's body. But that's the black and white area. And I know we don't like to operate in the gray, but with this kind of, almost with anything, we have to operate in the gray. What happens when the woman is touched by a person, or a man is touched by a man who's of higher position, and they know that speaking out could negatively affect them? And so instead of attempting to communicate vocally that they don't want this, they try to use nonverbal. Now, you've given a lot of personal examples, so I will give a personal example of mine. An acquaintance of acquaintance that I used to hang out with used to like to try to grab my hand and hold my hand. And I was fairly scared of that person. They weren't quite right in the head, and I didn't want them to lash out at me. So I would try to give these nonverbal cues. Don't touch me. But it was never enough. But the reason that I didn't vocalize it was I was scared. I didn't want this person to lash out at me or anything like that. And I think that happens a lot. I think that we forget that it has only been maybe within the last 30 years that women have really felt anywhere in the world, much less in Western countries, that they've had a real power over their destiny. We seem to forget that. We seem to want to minimize the effects of history. There's always this idea that we need to study history, because if we don't study history, then we'll repeat the same mistakes that we're doing over and over again. But when we do study history and we see things that we don't like, we tend to minimize that. Oh, that's not bad. Discrimination and racism and segregation in the country didn't end until like 50, 60 years ago. The idea that women should hold positions of power is still one of the most extremely unpopular opinions in this country. There are large majorities of men that don't think women should be in position of power. So when we talk about sexual assault, sexual violence, and things like that, there's automatically going to be a negative connotation against those people. And we have to take all that into consideration when we deal with this Me Too movement, again, whose goal was, first and foremost, solidarity. When someone takes, this is what I will grant you, Dave, people can take a movement and pervert it to meet their own goals. Are there feminists that just want to tear down men? Absolutely, and they're disgusting, right? They are absolutely disgusting creatures. And do they exist? And will they use the Me Too movement to perpetrate their goals? Absolutely, I'll give you that. But do you think, Dave, that is the majority, the large majority of women? No, I don't think you do.
No, Kathleen, we don't have any numbers. We don't have any numbers. That's my whole point. Yes, we do know that some, and thank you so much. I really enjoyed listening to you in that tone, which I kind of interrupted. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We have to live in the gray. And yeah, you're absolutely right. There are women who will use this system and pervert it to themselves. And yeah, you're right. Me Too was at least important to give that unity in the first place. But my point is that I don't think that the numbers that are being remotely affected, and nobody's looking at the numbers. And so when we look at how this is being done, we've lost our humanism here. Nobody is caring about the men who are being destroyed, and nobody is caring about the efficacy of this program, of this idea, of the idea that, we can stay. Yeah, sure. Companies have the right to fire people. But the cancel culture, the Me Too culture, the whole idea that if a woman says something, the man is guilty. Well, come on, Kathy. You just admitted to me that women lie and use this and pervert it. You must admit to me then that Me Too must come with due process then, does it not?
Well, so let me ask you two questions in response to that. How long has cancel culture been a thing in your mind?
I'd say 2014.
2014?
2015, 2014.
Okay, so 6 years. How long has cancel culture, as far as women speaking up for themselves, benefit?
As soon as the Me Too movement came out.
No. You misunderstand. How many times have women been blacklisted for speaking out against powerful men? How many times have women lost?
I don't know how many.
And well, let's just look. Don't.
How many numbers? Numbers. Tell me numbers. I want numbers. Tell me numbers.
Hold on, Dave. We're not. So this isn't like a I'm going to show you my sources, you're going to show me your sources kind of thing. This is just me and you talking, right? And so we're going to have to use a little bit of our intuition. You strike me as an extremely intelligent person, so I'm going to assume that you can conceive of situations in which historically women have been punished for speaking out. Now, we know based on the celebrity culture that celebrities have come out and talked about their blacklisting because of Harvey Weinstein and some of these other people. And those are just anecdotes, right? We don't like to go on anecdotes, but they give a picture. If a woman like Ashley Judd can be blacklisted, if a woman like Alyssa Milano can be blacklisted for speaking out, then we have to assume that only for 5 years has this been something that's going on for men. It's been going on for women forever. This is not new to women. This is only new to men. And by the way, one of my favorite celebrities of all time was affected by this. Johnny Depp was accused of some pretty horrible shit by Amber Heard, and he lost the ability to be in Pirates of the Caribbean. And I was really disappointed at it. It turns out Amber Heard may possibly have lied. Johnny Depp got his gig back.
Come on, she definitely lied. She's definitely the bad guy here.
Well, so
she's definitely the bad guy.
Yeah, but wait a second. When it was found out that she lied, we have a process to deal with that. You keep talking about due process. If a woman lies about sexual assault, you are free to avail yourself to the full extent of our court system, from civil.
I'm going to swear now. Because that's bull. Because I already lost everything. You're telling a rape victim that she could file a civil suit against her rapist. That's not a thing. I can't. What am I going to do? Sue the people who lied? No, I don't have recourse.
Wait a second. Now you have some common ground. Now you understand, right? See, I'm not trying to minimize your situation, right? I don't know. I refuse. In preparing for this debate, I refuse to look up any information on your particular situation because I did not want it to color my judgment in any way, shape, or form. And I did that specifically so that I would not form an opinion, positive or negative, otherwise, about you, right? People spoke to me that knew you because I am a member of the atheist communities. There are people that know you. And for the most part, what I heard is Dave is a great guy. That's pretty much what I heard. But I don't want to minimize your situation because I don't know much about your situation. I wasn't there, so I can't really comment on it. I'm going to believe that what you are saying is true because that's how I operate, right? I'm going to believe that what you are saying is true, right? Now, whether it is or not, I don't know because I wasn't there. So I can provide you with empathy. I can say, yeah, you know what? This sucks. This guy, he lost his job twice. These two women. But I'm using your situation to kind of flip it because this isn't a conversation about your situation. This is a comment about a social justice movement that has the capacity to do tremendous good, not only for people in the United States, but people all over the world, because we know that while the United States has a very bad track record with sexual assault, as you pointed out, Africa has a horrible track record with it. China, the Middle East, and these places will not get any better until the United States and Europe shine a spotlight on it. And how do we do that? Through social.
How does not giving women and men and accusations, how does elevating sexual assault cases above due process and just saying, okay, she said it, he's guilty, how does that help stop women from getting raped in Asia?
Well, let me ask you something. What do you think should be done? Because you lost your job, and Johnny Depp lost his job. Louis C.K. lost his job, although Louis C.K. is now doing his job again. The senator from Minnesota is thinking about running again. Johnny Depp got his job back again. So, with the exception of you,
tens of millions of dollars. Don't do that. Don't do that, Kathleen. Don't do that. Johnny Depp went through a whole lot of shit and a whole lot of horrible feelings, and so did I. This has been a terrible experience. Don't dismiss this with saying, fun. Don't say that.
I'm not dismissing your experience in any way, shape, or form. What I'm saying is,
don't say, "Oh, we're going to get our jobs back, so it's okay." When you do that, you're just like, I just want you to hear yourself saying, "Oh, that rape victim, she's fine. She got her job back. She's walking around. She's happy. Look at her. Look at that rape victim laughing. That rape victim is laughing. Right, she's fine." No, don't do that. It's wrong.
We have to understand these statements, Dave, in context of the broader conversation we're having. The conversation that we're having has Me Too gone too far? Right, so Me Too isn't about David. Me Too going too far isn't just about David Silverman. It's not a vacuum, right? It's about
people.
Right, it's about all women who have been affected by sexual violence. It's about all men who have been affected by sexual violence.
Right? I can't get my job back. I can't be unviolated. Women can't be unraped. It is a permanent thing. It is an attack.
That's where I'm going to disagree with you. You cannot get a job back at Atheists, American Atheists, or maybe you cannot get a job back at Atheists International Alliance. Though I would assume that, generally speaking, we understand atheists to be rational and empirical people as opposed to the other side of the aisle who believe in fairies, that, if evidence is presented in a court of law, that they would heed to that. But I want to know from you, what should private companies do? If a woman accuses someone or a man accuses someone of sexual impropriety, what do you want that company to do? Because they are not a court of law. They can't subpoena people. They can't force testimony. They can't do anything. So what exactly would you like them to do?
Well, you see, that's the thing. That's why Me Too is so toxic, because companies really don't have a choice. They have no choice to fight against this. They have to fire us. And that's why I left AAI. That's why AA fired me. They have to, because you can't fight against this mob, because this mob doesn't care about truth or justice. They care about lynching. And that's the point. What would I do? You asked me, what would I do? You've asked me a couple of times. The first thing that I would do, Kathy, is go back to what you said at the beginning of this thing, to get women to understand that they are not alone. Well, one way to do that is with an advertising campaign. To give some sense of the magnitude of violence. Well, one way to do that is with some quantitative research to give us the numbers to actually do things and to actually track things. The one thing that we should be doing is admitting the fact that the Me Too time is over. Everybody knows what the problem is, and it's now just becoming let's get the men back for all the things that they did to women some time ago. Well, I didn't hurt any women, and I didn't pay any penalty, and neither did Johnny Depp. But I did pay the penalty, and so did Johnny Depp, even though we didn't do the crimes, and so did so many others. And I think what we should do is realize that a crime is a crime. A crime is a crime. If you get raped, if you get robbed, if you get attacked, if you get cheated, report it to the police. Let them do their due process. Do not do the cancel culture of trying to get the person fired, because that's not due process. That's not fair. And I'll tell you very clearly, it is not moral. People are losing their livelihoods here by the hundreds of thousands, I would bet. And I have no numbers for that because nobody's doing the numbers. But what we have to stop doing is treating sexual assault as if it's some sort of a special thing above and beyond all these other crimes. You got a complaint? Go to the cops. Present your evidence. If you got no evidence, the guy goes free. That's the truth. That's the fact. And it should be the guy goes free, but also the woman goes free. If you're a guy and you get sexually harassed by a woman, you got to make a complaint to the cops. You got to bring your evidence and you got to take that woman down, or she will go free. We have to understand that abuse comes in all directions, goes in all directions. It is all bad. And Crimes are crimes. The reason we have our criminal justice system is to investigate these crimes, and there is nothing out there, and I mean nothing out there, because I have looked. There is nothing out there that supports the assertion that women are coming out and reporting these cases and being turned away by the police or the authorities. That's not a real thing. We just have to publicize that. We don't have to take down people. We don't have to hurt humanity. We don't have to cause division. We just have to publicize that women can come out. And then we have to publicize how bad the numbers really are. Let's do the work instead of just destroying lives, Kathleen.
So I'm going to just hammer home on this point again, and I know it may seem puerile, but we know who Emmett Till is. You know who Emmett Till is, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so Emmett Till was obviously innocent. How many innocent people have we executed in the course of American history? Lots. Not in comparison to the number of people we got right, but we have executed a lot of people who are innocent. We've jailed people who are innocent. We would not say that the criminal justice system has failed in its pursuit of justice. We would just acknowledge that the criminal justice system is run by people who make mistakes. Will the Metoo movement make mistakes? Yes. And when they make mistakes, we should absolutely show those mistakes and make sure they are not repeated. But that is not a critique of the overall. When you talk about numbers, Dave, we know that women historically will stay in abusive relationships because they don't have anywhere else to go and because their abusers will make them think that they are worthless. We know this. I know you know that.
Yes,
So
we do know that. Men will too. Johnny Depp shows that.
Men will sometimes stay in abusive relationships and they don't come forward, and yet they are assaulted. Children do not come forward all the time when they are abused. And women in the business community who are just now finally getting their legs up underneath them don't typically come forward for fear of losing their job, for fear of having their reputation destroyed, and because they do know that in a majority of places with the criminal justice system that is so overclogged, underfunded, and understaffed, that it can take years for these claims to process through. And in the meantime, they have to sit there and they have to work with these people. If